Hey everyone, this is a follow-up video to part 1, where I discuss the current covenants in Dark Souls 3 and try and fundamentally change them to better affect the experience within the game, instead of them having the impression that they were just a huge afterthought, with no focus on covenant identity and just having a lot of them function in the same way. So without further ado, let's get into the remainder of the covenants. Firstly, I want to get into the Blue Sentinels. In the previous video, we talked about how Blades of the Dark Moon no longer have the same auto-summon mechanic, so the only covenant now that can help Way of Blue members are the Blue Sentinels. The way you get summoned to help a Way of Blue member I don't think should be changed from how it is now. I did think about having blue summon signs, but if a member of the Blue Sentinels wants to be a part of the covenant yet they'd want to progress in the game, having a separate soapstone summon mechanic would not allow that to happen. But I want to change aspects of how this auto summon works, and to do this I'd need to change the way the online aspect works in Dark Souls 3. What I would do is make it so hosts can get invaded even if they're not embered. The reason behind this is longevity of the game's lifespan regarding the online presence. Now I could see how people could disagree with being succumbed to invasions even when not embered, but with that said, I believe PvP is a fundamental part of the game. To get around this, play offline. You get embered so much in Dark Souls 3 via killing bosses, and that in itself makes you eligible for invasions. But with making it so you don't have to be embered to get invaded, like I mentioned, this opens up numerous amounts of player-on-player interaction and expands the potential players to meet. Not only that, but an area will no longer become an invasion-free zone after killing a boss. The area will remain the same as if a boss was still already in it. Basically, invasions, invasions, invasions. But what do I want to see change to the way summon mechanics work with the Blue Sentinels? Well, if a host is unembered and gets invaded, and is in the Way of Blue, only one Blue Sentinel will be auto-summoned to help the host. When a Blue Sentinel enters the host's world, they give off an area-wide effect called Hand of Ashen, which stops Estus usage for the invader and the Blue Sentinel. The host, however, can still use Estus flasks. This will change the way confrontation plays out. The invader will have to make a decision whether to target the host or to move onto the Blue Sentinel to get their Estus back. Moving on, if a host is embered, 2 Blue Sentinels can be brought into the world to deal with just one invader. And regarding if the host is embered and has phantoms, now I had this idea, if a host had phantoms, a Blue Sentinel could not enter a host's world, but I think that would limit the auto summon by too much. So instead, maybe with the no Estus effect the Blue Sentinel has, it also gets transferred to the summoned phantoms. With this, we're not necessarily changing the covenant, but changing the way the online function works in this game, to favour getting summoned and not waiting around, scratching our head and asking the question, is there anybody there? On to another auto-summon covenant, the Watchdogs of Farron. This in the base game is total bollocks. I think the reason this covenant is one of the hardest to get summoned into is 2 things. One, because it's near the start of the game, thus with the way summon requirements work, if a standard player, one going through the game for the first time, wants to progress, they will more than likely surpass the requirements, e.g. level too high or level their weapon too high. If you want to get summoned fairly regularly, I'd recommend being a soul level 35 with a +4 weapon. But the other reason I think this covenant is hard to get into is because of the area before Farron Keep, or should I say, the halfway fortress, and that is the Road of Sacrifice. This area does not have a boss at the end, and therefore when a player finishes this zone they are not embered automatically. This is a key difference here from the Aldrich Faithful over after Pontiff. I'd gather one of the main reasons the area after Pontiff is so busy is because of the fact after players kill Pontiff they are now eligible for invasions due to them being automatically embered after winning the fight. If the online was fundamentally changed like we mentioned earlier to allow invasions to those who are unembered, this covenant would more than likely see a lot more life. But what can we add to spice things up a little bit? Well, part of the game I love is when you fall into the wolf pit in Ariandel, and how the wolves beckon each other by howling. I'd like to see this concept and add it to the Watchdogs. With the Covenant idolizing a wolf, it kind of makes sense. So first things first, I'd like to add something to the Halfway Fortress section of the game. Similar to how rats venture out of holes in the walls throughout the entire game, I'd like that to happen here, but with wolves. So the area is full of sleeping wolves that are non-hostile until provoked. When a Watchdog of Farron enters a world, they have a consumable named Farron Beckoner, which when used, you will let out a wolf-like howl and summon nearby wolves to your area and swarm the host. Not only this, but as a Watchdog you are immune to the seed of a fallen giant. I like this because the wolf experience was amazing in Ariandel, and this gives the control to the player, amplifying the experience for both invader and invadee. Now on to the last one we'll go into. I'll talk about the Spears of the Church a little bit, but not as much as these. Anyway, Aldrich Faithfuls, Gank City. So with everything we've discussed, we've changed the way the online element works in Dark Souls 3, now with hosts not needing to be embered to get invaded. This obviously still applies here for the exact same reason, more opportunity for online play. So I kind of wanted to add a gameplay mechanic to the Aldrich Faithfuls that differs from the Watchdogs of Farron. We know Pontiff can be a huge cluster of online activity with hosts having numerous phantoms, so let's give Aldrich Faithfuls rewards for kills within a world. When an Aldrich Faithful secures a kill, they gain the trait Essence of the Deep, becoming more and more powerful with each kill. How they become more powerful? Well, I guess that's down to what stat, perhaps affecting both physical and magic defense. Not only that, but keeping in line with the Deep and the Pontiff's law, perhaps as Aldrich Faithfuls rack up kills, their body starts to deform and black slime starts to drip from them. I think that'd look awesome. But a thing I'd like to point out is, if an Aldrich Faithful keeps racking up kills, there has to be a cap on how powerful they can get, and thankfully we've discussed this problem earlier in the other video. A host can no longer summon phantoms when they get invaded, so there's only so much killing an Aldrich Faithful can do, thus limiting how far these affected stats can climb. Again, this gives the Covenant a sense of identity and makes them feel different from the rest. This is no longer just an area-specific auto-summon Covenant, but a Covenant that now has a little depth and an objective to achieve whilst in the world. If you enter a world and there's 3 other phantoms, you'll visibly become more intimidating whilst you hack and slash your way through the other players, ruining that PvE experience for those lonely first-timers. Regarding Spears of the Church, I don't really want to change it up. I feel as though Spears is as good as it's going to get with creativity and Covenants, even though the basic premise of this Covenant is straight from Demon Souls. I'd perhaps scale you up as the boss, the more phantoms are in the world, and I know they already kind of do that, but if you're facing 4 foes as the Spear of the Church, you'll normally get destroyed unless you're a full bona fide hyper-armored badass. But like I mentioned, I wouldn't change much. But with that said, perhaps we could take a little out of the ordinary and add a Spear of the Church for every single phantom. That would be an interesting sight to behold. In conclusion, I wanted to talk about the Covenant rewards briefly. Honestly, a big thing is Covenant incentive, and when more than 60% of the Covenant rewards are catered to casters, it leaves the other players in the dark. Even with the addition to cosmetic rewards, this in itself entices people to go after those Covenant rewards, and not just complete them for the trophy or achievement. Like I mentioned in the previous video, I hope this trend of bland, boring, meaningless Covenants goes away in the future Souls-like titles. I want Covenants to have a serious impact on the world, but until then, I'll be AFK, waiting 6 goddamn hours for my Dark Moon summon. I've been Paragon. Till next time.